God will not allow anything in our life to be able to replace him. He'll allow us to pursue things and make us think they replace him. He'll allow us to live each day, in the rat race of life, continually trying to refill and refill and refill, and maybe feel satisfied because we eat 3 times a day and we consume all this stuff. But he knows that if we ever paused, we'd realize that none of it gives us real satisfaction. None of us can give us contentment. We will always be in a place of dissatisfaction when we're not pursuing God first. And so that's one of the signs of being too consumed, is you just really recognize that I'm just not content. I'm not satisfied. But another one is that a sign of it is that we neglect God. The Jewish people, bottom line, when they come to this, says, you guys are neglecting me. You're building your panel houses, but my house remains in ruin. Verse 9, when he says, why am I allowing these things to do it? Why am I blowing this stuff away? Because of my house, which remains in ruin. While each of you are busy with your own house. God's saying, you are neglecting me. And to neglect God is to dishonor God. Is to say that these things that I pursue are really more important. I've got a to-do list, God, and I prioritize it by most important. And your number is 7. And, God, I know you don't like being 7, but, right now, these are more important. That's what it's saying. That's what they were saying, and they were dishonoring him, because God says, build my house so I can take pleasure and be honored, God said in there earlier when he talked about it. And so when we neglect God, then really what we're doing is we're dishonoring him. Again, it speaks to the command of God where he says, you should have no other gods before me, because when we put something else more important to God, then we are saying that is God, or we're saying that we are God. And we're putting other things before him. We need to be honest and realize the fact that what we value is reflected in how we spend our resources. We've said that before, and I think it's just being honest and realizing that. There's nothing wrong with that, just being honest. It's pausing and reflecting and asking us, where do we spend our time? Where do we spend our money? What are the things that we really consume? In our work, in our family, in our recreations, in our relationships, in our toys, and in God. Include him in that. And I think if we're honest, we recognize that our actions really undermine the things that we can say. We're like the kids. We'll sit in here and say, oh yeah, I believe in God. He's the most important thing in my life. And yet when we look at our checkbook, or we look at our time schedule, or we look at the things that we do, we realize, well, maybe he isn't. Because if we're honest, we look and realize that, yeah, we're kind of neglecting him. God is number one, but everything on our to-do list shows that we've pushed him farther down. Here's the interesting thing I think about consumption is that we pursue consuming thinking it'll satisfy when in fact it does the opposite. It makes us want more. We just had dinner with a lovely couple last night, the Myers. And I won't use them in the illustration. They were nervous because they thought, well, if we eat with you on a Saturday night, we're going to talk about it on Sunday. Well, it's true. But we had a nice meal, and our daughter and us were there, and so, everybody's full and we're leaving. Well, the Myers decided they're going to go out for yogurt. So as we're walking out of this Chili's restaurant, our daughter goes, I'm hungry. Lisa says, well, go back in and eat the rest of your chicken you left on your we just ate a full meal, but suddenly this thought of, oh, yogurt, and we're now dissatisfied, and we want to be able to have more. It's a mental game of where we try to satisfy, but really it does the opposite. It wants us, we always long for more. We long for what's next on our schedule, what's next on our food list, what's next on the things that we do. David Goetz, in his book, Death by Suburb, he wrote this. He says, as long as the vision of our life is to supersize it, or I'll have the value house, we won't be able to break from the bondage of consumerism and discontent that comes with that. What he's saying is that as long as we believe in wanting things more, or wanting to be equal to our neighbor, or wanting to be able to value ourselves based on the things that we have, we will never be content. Because it feeds us. That's why advertisers pay for it, because it just feeds that continual discontent in our life. And so the message in this then is that instead of neglecting God, if we're keeping God first, it gives God the honor He deserves, and it frees us from this attitude of discontent. That because we put God in the place, that we focus on God and we recognize He is the one that provides. He is the one that I long to be able to please. He is the one that I worship and I live for. He is the one that will meet my needs. So we put our value on Christ instead on the stuff around us. Proverbs 3:9 says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruit of your crops. There's an honor that takes place when we acknowledge to God, I give to you first. And if you go on to read that passage, and it says, then I will fill your vats and your barns, and I will bless you. It's this way that God calls on us to acknowledge Him first, and how it frees us from this cycle of needing. And I think that applies in a lot of ways. I'm sitting here, thinking about as I'm, thinking about the pizza thing and other stuff. I'm thinking, I need to get out and exercise. But do I value that? But part of that whole food and all that other stuff is that we're feeding something. But when we put our focus and our value on God, it kind of motivates us to really want to do the thing that God calls us to do. And we live for more of a desire to please Him, and we become content because we realize that God is going to take care of everything else. Jesus said in Matthew 6, if you seek God and His righteousness, all these things will be added unto you. God will take care of that other stuff. Just seek God out. Just seek His will. Seek the kind of life that He intended. Stop pursuing the things that we think are going to be able to fill our needs and kind of, pushing God out of the way. So we neglect God. That's a sign that's in here. But the third sign in here is that we neglect God's work. They were out on a mission here. These people were supposed to come back. They were going to reestablish the city and reestablish the temple and reestablish the people of God to be the kind of people that they were before, to where people would actually, out of respect and in many ways fear them because they knew the God of the Israelites. But they weren't getting to that place because they were busy in their own lives. And so they were really kind of splintered out. And so the temple was never getting built. The temple was a place of worship, a place of dependence, a place of reverence to God, putting Him in the center and acknowledging at a high place who God is, and He's the one that we live for. Jesus Christ gave us an assignment when He left. I don't know if you guys realize that. Maybe you didn't get the memo. But there was an assignment in the Bible. It talks about that Jesus gave us. In Acts 1, Jesus said, you will be my witnesses. And He talks about, locally and regionally and throughout the world that, even though I'm ascending to my Father in heaven, I still live on this earth through you. And you are the ones that are my witnesses. And you go out and people see me through you. That's the way that it's going to work. And if that mission wasn't there, then there would be no point. You might as well just come on up to heaven with me and let's hang out together. But He doesn't call us to heaven because there is work to be done. We're on a mission to be His witnesses. Matthew 28, He says, go and make disciples. It was pretty simple. That's what we do. We go and we be a witness to people. People look and say, who is it that makes you happy? Why are you so content in a world that is discontent? And we say, well, let me tell you why. And they come. And they want what we have. And they get it. And they accept Jesus and they start to be transformed. The whole idea of mission statements and all that stuff is overrated. But, we have a mission statement, and this is the simplest version of it. We haven't put it on a fancy logo anywhere. But this is it, to give it to you. This is to love God, to care for each other, to serve the world. We talk about worship, we talk about community, church life, and we talk about serving. That's what we do. If you're a believer in Jesus, that's what we do. That's what you do. We come here together in community to worship God because, we can worship on alone, but there's something special about worshiping together in community. It's special. So we long to love God and worship Him, and we want to help each other get that and understand what that means to love God in every part of your life.